welcome to On Purpose with Aisha Cogborn. As you've probably guessed, I'm Aisha Cogborn. And if you have never joined us, On Purpose is a podcast about people who are bold enough to live their dreams. Because guess what? We all have dreams. We don't all pursue them, but we all have them. Maybe you've given up on it. Maybe you tucked it away years ago thinking that it just wasn't possible. Or maybe you just simply don't know where to start. And so this podcast introduces you to regular people just like you who have figured out a way to pursue their dreams. Wasn't easy, wasn't perfect. They've made mistakes. They've had challenges, just like you will too when you pursue yours, but they're still here. And so we started this show 3 years ago as an audio podcast, and we were on hiatus for a little while we're working on some other projects, but we're back. And I tell you, I'm back because there are just too many great conversations that I want to have and too many amazing people that I want to introduce you to. And today is no exception. Today's guest is Danielle Smith Parker, and she is the CEO and founder of Detroit Maid. It's an online marketplace for on-demand home cleaning, serving 86 different cities throughout Michigan, Ohio, and Illinois. And Danielle and I went to college at CMU together, and we've kept up with each other. And I'm just so excited about our conversation today. So welcome, Danielle.
Thank you so much for having me, Aisha.
I'm so glad you're here. So let's just go ahead and jump into it. And I want to say welcome to all of you who are watching live. And I know there will be others of you who may watch later or who may listen later. But if you are here with us live, go ahead and check in. Let us know where you're from and if you have a business. And if you have questions as we go through the conversation, go ahead and type them in the chat. And throughout the conversation, we may have an opportunity to get to some of your questions too. So make sure that you type them in. So let's go ahead and get started. So Danielle, you have a degree or background in communications and public relations and all that good stuff. How do you go from that to having a cleaning company? How did that happen?
Yeah, it definitely was not a straight line. So my degree is a dual degree in public relations and public affairs. And I hopped right into government relations right after college. And that sort of took me into advocacy work and community organizing and communications. And I found that I love the mission of the work that I was doing, but I hated working for people. Like I hated working for someone else. And I felt stuck for a really long time. And there was a sort of a perfect storm of commuting to Lansing 3 days a week, having, a ton of other things that I was involved in at home. So living in Detroit, commuting to Lansing, working from home a few days a week, feeling like I wanted to do something different and not sure what that was. And I wanted to create opportunities for myself and also wanting to come home to a clean house and not spend my time cleaning. And I just looked around for cleaning services and I couldn't find anyone who met my needs. I wanted to kind of set it and forget it. I wanted it to be automated, and that didn't really exist. At that time in Detroit. And so then I started to look for the bigger companies. They didn't come into the city. They didn't cross 8 Mile. And so I felt frustrated by that. And so sort of I want to do something different. I'm not sure what. My social justice mindset is like, I'm pissed off, that you won't come into the city. And I thought, I bet I can create something. And so I kind of set a plan in motion that, this is something that I believe I'm good at assembling teams. I'm good at cleaning. And it sounds like a huge departure from my background, but it actually is exactly where I needed to be. And I found a space that I could have a lot more control, flexibility, and freedom. And then those things that I did, for my 9 to 5, now I'm able to do as I please and as I choose. And I sit on 2 boards that were my former employers. So now I still get to do those things and have a little bit more say in when and how often I do it.
Yeah. One of the things I love so much about that is you found that there were skills that even from your former career that you were able to leverage. You're good at assembling teams and the planning and things of that nature. Cleaning was just a natural talent, and whether I'm good at it or not, I don't want to do it. But but just understanding, I think sometimes we often think, well, I have to have done things exactly the way that it looks in the business that I'm going to create, instead of recognizing that we have skills or talents or just natural abilities that have come from everyday life, just come from the way that we're wired, that may come from different professions that we can leverage in, that we underestimate.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And when you get that, I mean, I think that gives you a lot more confidence in terms of not feeling that there's such a gap when you're crossing over into a completely different industry.
Absolutely. And I find every day there's something that connects, a certain skill set that I learned in a previous career, or a certain experience that I've had, or a failure that I learned from, that I'm able to apply to the business that, if I hadn't just kind of taken the chance to see what happens, I wouldn't have gained that experience that really would allow me to leverage it towards the next thing.
Yeah. Now, you come from an entrepreneurial family too. So tell us a little bit about that, and when you realized, okay, I don't want to work for someone else, like how did coming, from that entrepreneurial background change the way that you saw the world?
It's really interesting because my parents are actually both therapists, and they owned a pizza shop. So so just very similar, it makes you say, where did that come from? And they saw it as sort of an opportunity for additional income. And when I shared my plans with my mother, she was like, that is crazy. She said, I don't get it. I don't understand it. And she probably has started to come around maybe a year ago. Yes, but one thing that's interesting is that it's been a really good lesson for me in really looking inward to kind of validate, what you know to be true or what you believe is your purpose. And so I spent a really long time looking externally, like, don't you understand what I'm doing? And it doesn't really matter if other people understand what you're doing. So, and it's just funny. So now when we look back in hindsight and have these conversations about kind of, where Detroit Maid has come, what some of our goals are, there's a little bit of I see what you did there. I see what you were doing. And it's funny. And now it comes at a time where I'm like, oh, well, I mean, you can get it, you can not get it, either way. But it's been a really valuable lesson for me.
Yeah. Now, what year did you launch?
2014.
2014. So 6 years in. Tell us what it looked like in the beginning.
Absolutely. So I was working for an advocacy. Well, technically, I would say 2013, actually. So it took a while to kind of, officially launch. So I was working for an advocacy organization in Lansing, and I decided, like, you know what, I'm going to really try this. I started working with a local organization called the Build Institute, which really helps you flesh out your ideas, get your business plan really tight, and identify resources, and really see if it's something that that has value and can contribute to the community in a way that, you want it to do. And I went through that program, and I was like, I'm doing this. I'm definitely doing this. And then I sat on it for 2 months. I didn't do anything. And then people from class started to say, well, I know you started a company. Can you, handing out referrals and everything. And I thought, okay, I really need to get a move on it. And so I started to take on a few different clients. I had one employee. So it was me and my cousin, who was my first employee. And I would, 2 corporate clients we had, I would go at 4 a.m. and clean. And then I would, drive to Lansing, and I would sit on the house floor. So I'm like cleaning toilets at 5 a.m. And then at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm like in a house session. And then at 9 at night, I'm checking in on one of my team or my only team member, how's everything going with this client? And we were able to kind of build and grow. And as we started to grow and have some traction, we were fortunate enough to get a larger client. I think I can't remember, a movie was airing at the time. Transformers, that's the name of the movie. And we got that client, the set, and it gave us a little leverage to kind of grow. And I said, you know what, 3 years from now, I'm going to just work hard enough for this to outpace my 9 to 5 in a way that makes me feel comfortable enough to leave. And so we made that happen in about 2.5 years. And we've been, steadily growing ever since.
So I'm guessing you didn't hit that point in 2.5 years with you and your cousin.
Right. I didn't skip that part. So we did. Yeah, we added team members along the way. So, yeah, definitely. So we've added team members along the way. So, as we grew, we would add one, then add another. So we've got 16 now. We had a few more with COVID. Things have kind of shifted a little bit. But yeah, so we've grown kind of over the years. And so in 2019 was when we expanded to Illinois and Ohio. So we're in just a couple cities in Ohio, and we're in about 26 cities in Illinois. And so we're set to expand, do the next phase of the expansion to complete that in January. So we're really excited about the growth and, being able to create jobs, not just locally, but as we continue to expand. So I'm really excited about how things are going.
Now, one of the things that I know I've struggled with even personally is being able to relinquish the control.
Yes.
This is your baby.
Yeah.
Your brand that's on the line. And it's one thing when it's you and your cousin, but then you've got, 14 other people who are out representing the brand. Like, how do you make sure that the quality of the work continues to align with your standards? And when there are challenges there, how have you dealt with it?
Absolutely. Systems. So this question is so well timed. So for one, it has always been hard for me to relinquish control. And it got to the point that it's like, okay, you can either stay exactly the size that you are, or you can figure out a way to grow consistently and strategically. And the only possible way to do that was for me to relinquish control. It was not possible. So I think I was forced to, to be in that position. And I still struggle with it. I'm still like, okay, can this be outsourced? And there's a book called Clockwork that has been such a gift. It's called Clockwork. I can't remember the name of the author, but they talk about what can you outsource? What can you delegate? How can you break it down to only the things that you're excellent at? So the thing that's on your plate, my plate as Danielle, should be, manageable and lean, and everything else I should find a way to outsource and delegate. So I'm constantly referring back to Clockwork, probably once a week, because I'm like, wait, I probably shouldn't be doing this. Wait, how can I outsource? Let me Clockwork this, So it's a forever struggle.
I hope you all caught that. But the book called Clockwork, I know I will be ordering that on Amazon tonight.
It's a really good book. And they have worksheets and everything. I highly recommend it.
One of the things that I think finally just accepted about myself, I've always known it, but I didn't accept it, is that I just have a squirrely little brain. Like, I live up here. I'm a big picture thinker. I can see the vision. Like, you can tell me something and I can tell you 5 years out exactly what it'll look like. Don't ask me to implement it.
Yep.
When it starts getting into the tactical stuff, it's game over.
Yeah.
But I've tried for over 40 years now I'm gonna be more focused. I just got to be more disciplined. And it's just not who I am. And so I finally had to accept that and say, then, okay, now who has that gift? Who is wired that way? And how do I make sure that I have the people around me that really balance me? We balance each other out so that we have all the bases covered. But you've got to be willing to admit that you can't do it.
Absolutely. I feel like that is the answer. Like, I feel like I'm finally learning and understanding that. Like, surround yourself with people who have skill sets that you don't have, people who are smarter than you, people who are better than you at these things, you know? And I'm like, I get it. You know, I'm the same way. I'm a vision person. I'm not a process and detail oriented person. So having, you know, aligning myself and having a team or a C-suite that says, hey, you need to focus on A, B, C, and D and have consistent systems is a godsend.
Yeah. As you've grown over the past 4 years, 6 years, look, my math is jacked up already.
Yeah.
Over the past 6 years, what have been some of the unexpected challenges that grow?
I would definitely say, there's so many. I'm trying to think of the biggest one would be 2020, COVID. But that's probably the most obvious one. But I would say just learning the value of feedback and failing forward. And like learning how much of a benefit there is to failing fast and often, if that makes sense. It's sort of like to be able to try something, see, okay, this isn't going to work. This isn't going to work. And do that as early and often as possible. And then pivot has been really invaluable. So I would say learning lessons from trying, you know, being, I guess I would say bold enough to try something that you're not necessarily as familiar with, and then being open to hearing the feedback and you know, looking for what works and what doesn't, and then creating something from what's left. I think that's been probably one of the biggest lessons. And then with regard to COVID, just pivoting on a dime has been scary and crazy and exciting. And I feel like there were moments where I felt like this, I don't know if we're going to make it. And then moments where I felt like, you know, excuse my language, but I'm a badass. We changed that quick, you know? So just, you know, being open enough and humble enough to recognize where there are gaps and being okay with saying, oh yeah, I didn't do that right. Let me fix it. Let me turn it around.
Yeah. So March 2020, COVID, we realized like, okay, this is a big deal. And the world shuts down. Like, what was the first thought that went through your mind that you can remember?
We're not going to make it. This is it. That was my first thought. And then, you know, just trying to come up with ways to, one, keep everybody employed. So we have this team of people who are relying on us, who, you know, what are they going to do? What are we going to do? And then, excuse me, at the time, our business was about 80% residential and 20% commercial. So, you know, as you can expect, residential was completely shut down. So we took the time to pivot, focus on, you know, commercial disinfecting services, immerse ourselves in the trainings, COVID, you know, understanding all of that, finding out what PPE gear we needed and doing all that just kind of on a dime. Part of me felt like, I don't know if this is going to work. We'll see what happens. And then the other part of me felt like we're going to be just fine. So there was that period between, I would say, March and May. That was probably the most turbulent time in my life. You know, I was a few months pregnant. My husband had COVID. He was quarantined in the basement. I'm like, I don't know if this business is going to make it. Like, I don't know. I'm about to lose my mind. But we turned it around and we actually were able to shift, and the pivot is still, I would say, ongoing because we're primarily commercial at this point. We've reintegrated residential with more safety measures in place and daily check-ins. And we feel like, we know the team is safe, there's more stability, and we can see there's hope, there's growth, and we've turned a corner, but that was definitely probably the most turbulent time.
So let's just take a step back because here's the thing. Like we hear these stories. Oh my gosh, all these things were going on. and I made it. We made it through. But how? Like what?
Yeah. I hear you.
I'm just picturing your life in that moment. Like, I've lost 80% of my business. My husband is quarantined in the basement. I'm pregnant. I've got people I'm responsible for their livelihood. Like, how do you get yourself out of bed when you're just like, too much, can't deal with this? Like, how?
Well, some days I didn't. Some days I didn't get myself out of bed. But I mean, honestly, I wish I could roll out a formula, but I definitely think that it was, if we didn't have the resources that we had in terms of folks, locally, folks like Tech Town in Detroit, we were able to connect with SBA, and we didn't get an SBA loan, but we got a lot of technical assistance around training and getting people prepared to be able to, return to the workplace, and, be safe with PPE gear. So sort of the technical assistance, we got funding from, I believe, Tech Town. And that kind of gave me hope, like, okay, well, if these people think that we can survive, we must have something that gives them the belief that we can survive, and I've always struggled with imposter syndrome. So, during that time, that really translated to my business. Like, I don't know, this probably isn't going to work. And then, when we would hear from Tech Town, like, hey, we have this class or these resources, apply for this grant so that we can help you stay afloat. I felt like, okay, if they think that this is a possibility, maybe I should kind of change my, shift my mindset. And I felt more of a drive to, figure out a way. So it definitely helped. And then also just the, your back is against the wall. I'm like, I can't, like, we're employing these people and they're relying on us for their employment. I'm like, we got to figure something out, man. So.
One of the things that I love so much about that too is you didn't go it alone. Like, you had, even before you had gotten into this bind, you had connected yourself in the entrepreneurial community, in the ecosystem. Mm-hmm. So you knew people knew you were accessing resources. Mm-hmm. So when people came across things that they knew could help you, they knew to reach out to you.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I see so much, and I really see it with entrepreneurs of color, is that, and I think part of this even goes back to when we talked about, with imposter syndrome. I've seen people, because I'm here in Phoenix, not a lot of people of color, not a lot of entrepreneurs of color for sure. Mm-hmm. And I was often, I'd go to an event, a startup event, something like that. I'd be the only one. For a while, I'd be the only Black person there.
Yeah.
Or I'd see one other across the room.
Yeah.
But what I would hear from a lot of people is, they might walk into those rooms and they felt intimidated. They felt like they didn't belong. And so then they never went back.
Yeah.
They didn't sign up for the incubators. They didn't plug in and get to know people because it was, that overriding feeling of, I don't belong here. I'm not as smart as these people. My business idea isn't as good as theirs. And so then when you need the help,
mm-hmm.
you're in a position to get it.
Absolutely. I feel like if I have felt uncomfortable more often than not, and I'm thankful, to have still just continued on. I mean, the Build Institute was probably that was the first incubator that I was involved in. And they were sort of my entree into that entrepreneurial ecosystem. Mm-hmm. And I remember we went around the room and each person had to share their business idea. So you had people who were like, I'm doing this app and, with AI and blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to create this thing that, revolutionizes the way we eat vegetables and, all these things. And I was terrified because I just felt like, okay, they're going to get to me and I'm going to say, I'm going to have a cleaning business, and I felt scared. And then I thought, no, this is what I want to do. And this is my idea, and so I was still scared, felt the fear, did it anyway. And the reception after that was like, oh, I guess that wasn't so bad. I guess maybe, and then you go to the next thing. And I think one of the most significant memories was a little less than a year ago. And I was in an investor, like a workshop, and they talked about, is Detroit the next Silicon Valley? And, folks were saying basically like, no, it's not. It's a totally different animal. It's a totally different ecosystem, and it's great. It's fine. And I remember they talked about a value in being small. And, we have aspirations to scale globally. I feel like we're on a good track, but we're definitely a small business. And so the speaker says, stay small. There are lots of companies here that are only making, 30, 35 million. And I just felt like, I don't think I'm in the right place, because he's saying only so the speaker's floor felt like my ceiling. And I just felt like, I don't think I'm supposed to be here. But then I thought, like, you know what, I'm here for a reason. Even though I don't feel very comfortable, I'm here for a reason. So, I want to continue to just, if I'm uncomfortable, feel the discomfort and keep pushing, because the more I'm in those spaces where I'm uncomfortable, the more I'm going to just keep growing and pushing. And I feel like that's the case for most of us as entrepreneurs. We're going to be uncomfortable. If we're doing it right, we're going to be uncomfortable, and we're just going to keep pushing forward.
Yeah. Couple of things that I've seen just in the ecosystem is, number one, so if we think about Silicon Valley, just that whole notion, I think there's definitely more of a comfort level around failure. And I think particularly for those of us that may have come out of corporate America or come out of any situation where we were employed by someone else for a long period of time, like, failure isn't something you do. Like,
yeah. And it's not something you're proud of.
Gets you fired, We're used to, I've got to do it. It needs to work. And where you've got people that have maybe come straight out of college or even forgone an education and went straight into, hey, let me work on my venture. And they're very comfortable with failing forward, failing. Like, how did you even overcome that mindset around failure is okay? Failure is a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, I would also attribute that to just the support in this ecosystem. Each incubator, each accelerator that talks about the value of failure, each lesson learned, whether it's, client relations or some, not having certain processes in place and saying, oh man, okay, that totally would have gone better if we had this system in place, and thinking, man, I'm glad I failed at this now as opposed to a year from now. We're way bigger than we were a year ago. Thank God I failed at that in 2019, And so I know it's a totally different mindset, but there's so much value in that, fail early mindset.
Yeah. And then the only way you can even figure that stuff out is to do it.
Yeah.
And I see so many people that are waiting to have it all figured out and for everything to be perfect before they'll even attempt anything. Yeah. So the other thing I see in the ecosystem is this whole and I'll do the comparison, say, from Detroit to Silicon Valley or some of the other places. This whole notion of, okay, I'm going to get out there. Everybody else, throw your money at me and let me see if this works.
Right.
It doesn't, I'll just go come up with some other idea to get you to pay for it. Where when I look at businesses in Detroit, it is, and a lot of other places too, it's what we're going to do. We're going to figure it out. And it may just look like a hustle for a minute, but we're truly bootstrapping. We're figuring out on our own. How do we get to that point where we say, okay, you know what, to get to that next level, what does tapping into additional financial resources look like?
Yeah, I think some of that mindset, you can attribute that to privilege, and that, I think as, Black women, we haven't been brought up in that way. Like, okay, I'll take on these investors, see what sticks, and if I don't give them their money back, they just won't get it back and I'll try the next thing. We haven't had the privilege we haven't had that luxury for most of us haven't. I know I haven't. But I do think that the more we're in spaces where these conversations are being had, regardless of whether or not we're welcome in those spaces, like we bring our own chair and we sit down in those spaces and we make our voices known and we're clear about what our goals are. I think the more doors will open for Black women in particular to be in these spaces. And then also the more comfortable we'll all be, like, I'm supposed to be here. The more comfortable, for example, I feel like the meeting that I attended a year ago where I had sticker shock when he said, only 35 million, I don't have the same mindset I wouldn't have that same mindset in that same meeting today. Mm-hmm. And I think the more we go into those spaces, the more we realize, no, I'm supposed to be in this space. Different groups or different people may have had more access or, more of a runway to be in the spaces where you have the mindset and the conversations about, money being free flowing, or more opportunities have been availed to certain groups, but that's okay. I'm supposed to be here regardless of whether you think so or not. So I think, the more we insert ourselves in those spaces, the more prevalent that will be. Hopefully, I'm hoping that my kids will have a little bit of an easier time and feel more like, well, what, I want to do it and I'm going to do it, as opposed to, barriers being imposed on them.
Yeah. Yes. So if you're just joining us, my guest today is Danielle Smith Parker. She is the founder and CEO of Detroit Maid, which is an online marketplace for cleaning services, on-demand cleaning services. They're in 86 different cities in 3 different states. And, we've been talking about how you started, the growth that has happened over the past 6 years. But some of the things that we've touched on is the fact that you are a mom. And I want to just get a sense of what a typical day looks like for you.
So a typical day, a COVID typical day is very different. So it ranges from, working with virtual school to, working on my business to, managing things with the newborn. Thankfully, we share the load at home. So I have no idea what I would do if my husband weren't also, managing virtual school, managing things with work. We're both kind of juggling. So it's a lot, but this has been definitely an eye opener and a great opportunity to realize what I can't do and be okay with it, because it is absolutely impossible to, manage everything at the same level. So I think just being in this space with regard to COVID and having to pivot and change things, has really put me in the mindset of, okay, what can be done today? What can I manage? And am I okay with it? So, my work day is shorter now and I'm okay with that. I delegate more and I'm okay with that. I outsource more and I'm okay with that. And I was forced to be in the position of, okay, this has to be done. And I'm not going to compromise my mental health, my physical health for it to get done. So there's a gulf in between those two things. So how do I figure that out? So this has been sort of a trial by fire.
What have been some of those expectations that maybe you had of yourself that you've gotten comfortable letting go of?
For some reason, I somehow thought that I would have a regular work day with, two school-age kids in virtual school and a newborn. And, I realized pretty quickly that wasn't realistic. And so I have a running list. I have a Google sheet that kind of helps me manage everything that I need to do. So I just sort it really quickly. It's like, okay, so this is what needs to get done today. I sort it for the month and I update it daily, constantly throughout the day. So it's just kind of like my version of my planner. And so those and they're color coded and everything. So that list used to be this long, and as household responsibilities changed and shifted and things changed with COVID, that list became shorter. And I think that, becoming okay with that and saying like, okay, this is not going to get done today. So here's the goal. Okay. The goal is for this to get done next week as opposed to tomorrow. It's put me in a space of having to plan differently and having to be comfortable with, setting a different timeline, just, for the sake of my own health and well-being. So, and that's been kind of a constant struggle. So I feel like as of what time is it? 7:36. Things are a lot better than they used to be.
Now, you are fairly newly married.
Mm-hmm.
You're just celebrated your 2-year anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
2 years as of 2 days ago. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Happy belated anniversary.
Thank you.
So you've been in business for 6 years.
Yep.
You've been somebody's wife for 2. Now, I imagine, and before you were married, you were a single mom.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I hear, whether it's true for some people, not true at all, whatever it means, but I know you've heard it too, but there's this trope out there that there are some men that are intimidated
Mm-hmm.
by a strong, independent woman.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And how it doesn't sound like that's a challenge in your household at all. But what are some of the things that you've done as you learn to merge being CEO, being founder, having been a single mother to now there's a blended family, you've got new roles and responsibilities. Like, what has that process looked like for you?
Not thinking that I have to do it all.
Mm.
I think it comes, and I read this article probably 2 weeks ago, and it just kind of blew my mind. And it talked about how sort of doing it all or being, I don't want to say fiercely independent, because I value being fiercely independent, but ultra independence to your detriment can sometimes be a trauma response. And I heard that and I was like, ouch, because
beat me all in my face.
Yeah, I was like, and I think that it's more prevalent than, we would care to admit. It's something that's really common for us as Black women. And I think that that's, saying like, no, I got it. I got it has been kind of our thing because we've had to have it. So I know that for me, a lot of adjusting with regard to my marriage, with regard to my business, everything has been like, oh, okay, I guess I can. Oh, you want to? Oh, yeah, okay. And now I feel more comfortable. Like, yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, you got it. Thank you. As opposed to no, I can do it, and then being stressed out and frustrated from carrying the burden of deciding that I have it. We don't necessarily always have to carry everything. So I feel like for me, that's a lifelong lesson, constantly learning and growing and really, really stepping into that. But I would definitely say that would be one of the most significant adjustments is accepting support, accepting help, and, just kind of being trusting, accepting that openness of like, no, I really do have your back. Okay.
That's good advice. Good advice. And I know it's something that a lot of women that I know struggle with. And then some of us are just tired. We're like, please help me.
Right. Absolutely.
So we got a question from the audience. Brenda in Phoenix asks, what scared you then that doesn't scare you now?
Oh, that doesn't scare me now. Oh, that's a good one. Okay, that's a really great question, Brenda. What scared me then, I would definitely say, not to beat a dead horse, but failure was probably my biggest fear. And now, I think I failed enough that I'm like, I'm still here. I'm good. So, I definitely won't say that I don't get scared. I think that would be unrealistic. But I feel so much more comfortable with failure that I'm more inclined to just feel the fear and do it anyway. So terrified of failure to the point that there were so many things that I think historically I've just not done because what if it doesn't work out? What if I fail at it? And now I feel like, okay, let's see what happens. This is so scary. Oh my God, as I'm doing it. So yeah, fear of failure would probably be that.
That's good. That's good. If you've got questions, go ahead and make sure that you type them in the chat so that we can get them in. But I have plenty of questions. I'm trying not to be selfish here. So if you've got some questions, go ahead and type them in the chat so that we can get to them before our time is up today. So Danielle, let me ask you, as you look back over the journey of the past 6 years, what do you think has been the most challenging part of entrepreneurship that you didn't anticipate?
Oh, that's a good one too. Work-life balance. I would definitely say, what I set out to do when I decided, like, I just want to do my own thing. I am an entrepreneur. I felt like this is me. This is no question. But one thing that I didn't realize is, when you have that much freedom, you can really easily fall into that trap of working around the clock, just sort of, okay, I'll work at 3 a.m. I'll do this, I'll do that. I'll be working while I'm, on the treadmill. I'll be working while I'm at my kid's baseball game or, whatever the case is, and realizing that, that it's, for me, it's not healthy. So I guess I didn't realize the degree to which that can be really, really harmful. I mean, I have reached the point of panic attacks because of just working nonstop, worrying. And then, it'll take the time of just saying, like, you know what, I cannot, work nonstop. I cannot obsess about this particular problem or this particular situation constantly. I have to set some boundaries. So creating those boundaries has probably been the most difficult. So I think I'm better at it than I was, a year ago. And a year from now, I hope and pray to God that I'm way better at it than I am now, that I continue, to grow in that area because it's a constant struggle.
Yeah. I tell you, one of the things that I had to really check myself on because I was doing that same thing. One of the reasons that I wanted to leave corporate America is because of burnout. I mean, I was working 70 hours a week. I got sick, like developed a chronic illness. I mean, it was just like this, I've got to stop this. And then I noticed when I started my own business, I was imposing that same thing on myself. And sometimes it was more difficult because I enjoyed what I was doing. And so I wasn't recognizing that you got to sleep, like you got to eat. Like there would literally be times where I would be working and I would have to go to the bathroom and I wouldn't go. Like I really 4 hours. Like that's crazy. And so I had to I always talk about, making sure that you don't build a Frankenstein business. Because it's very easy to say the very reason that you want to start the business to give you more freedom, give you more flexibility, give you the opportunity to take better care of yourself, whatever that is, you turn around and impose that same pain that you're trying to get away from on yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, we got a question from Sarah. She asked, we remember Sarah from CMU. We're actually all there at the same time. So Sarah's question is, who inspires you the most?
Oh, I love that question. I would say, well, I have to just pick one, or I want to pick a couple. So historically, there's 2 people that kind of pop into my mind, and that's Madam C.J. Walker and Gordon Parks. And so Madam C.J. Walker, for pretty obvious reasons. She was a pioneer in her industry. She made something out of nothing, and she was really relentless in the way that she pursued her dreams. Gordon Parks, I felt like there wasn't a space for him before he was him. There wasn't a thing, and for him to kind of create. Gordon Parks, the photographer, and he worked for Life magazine, and then he became this world-renowned photographer, for those who might not be familiar. And he just created a space that was just unprecedented, and it challenged people. He challenged people to see his work, and he made himself known in the most consistent and quiet of ways, and that has always really inspired me. And then when I kind of bring it more closer to now, I would say Michelle Obama, just because of her, she has pursued her dreams, her goals. She manages family and her professional pursuits in a way that still allows her to, take time for herself, honor her family, honor her career, and just have that balance. And so I would say that those three would be the most significant for me.
Excellent. So we've got a question from Pam. Pam asks, you said earlier that people didn't know what you were doing. What motivated you to keep going?
It's funny because I love that question. My motivations kind of shifted and changed and flowed depending on my mood. So there were times where, the initial drive was like, I know I can create something that is different than what we've seen. And I don't exactly know how, but I know that I can start here and just continue to build on it. So at first it was the drive. I should step back a little bit. One, to get out of the space that I was in. I did not want to work for anyone. And I also just felt this need to start something and see it through, like build something out on my own and allow that thing to create the flexibility that I wanted. So at first it was that drive to do that. And that's been pretty steady, steadily the goal. But then there are those low moments where I felt the most misunderstood. And sometimes all I had was like, I'm gonna show you, So there were moments like, you might not see it now, but just watch, I'm not gonna say anything. I'm just gonna, set my goals, smash the heck out of those goals and let them speak for themselves, and that, there were those moments where that was like, just wait, and then, kind of higher moments, I would kind of go back to center, which is, I want to create something. I want to create opportunities for other people. I want to try this out and see if I can actually do it. I want to have control over when I come and go, when I travel, what kind of impact I make without anyone saying necessarily, how much money I make. So those drivers have been the case. And I think that has helped me to also be humble. I mean, we've had moments where, a team member has quit at the last minute. I'm in the middle of a pitch meeting. I'm walking out with a $10,000 check. I see a text, so-and-so didn't show up. So I, take off my suit. I put on my Detroit Maid uniform that's in the trunk, and we go and we're cleaning toilets, so like, you got to be humble. Like you can't for the goals that I have, I don't have room to just go like, well, I can't do this or I can't do that. There's certain goals. And I think that has allowed me, or kind of just knowing like, okay, there's something bigger. Your goals are long-term and you can see them. I think that has helped to fuel some of the more difficult times and more, turbulent moments, or helped me to do things that I really didn't want to do.
Yes. So we've got another question from Brenda. I really want to get in here. How often do you have priorities that need to be accomplished, but you run out of time? And how do you handle it when that happens repeatedly?
Yeah, well, that's a really good one because it's a struggle. So the Google sheet really does help me. I wouldn't say it's antiquated. It's not antiquated necessarily, but it's just really a basic bare bones sheet that I've created that just has, the due date, the status of the project, what the task is, and it can be anything, just everything I need to do. Notes about the project, the priority. I have it set 1, 2, or 3, and how long it will take, which is A, B, or C, right? That's my own little formula. And so when I look at that, when I see that list, and at the end of the day, there's a big chunk of those, my priorities that haven't gotten done, it usually takes me a few days to say, like, okay, I really need to shift this, because the more I look at this long list that isn't getting done, I'm going, man, I didn't do it again. I didn't do it again. When really the problem isn't that I, failed at accomplishing the task. Like, each day is a full day. But the problem is I need to manage my expectations better. So sometimes it takes a second to go, like, wait a minute. So this list of 16 things that needs to get done, at 11 o'clock at night, you're going, oh man, I only did like 9 things. I suck. That's not gonna get me anywhere. Mm-hmm. So maybe looking at that list of 16 and going, okay, this list should probably look more like 8, or whatever the case is at that time. And then also, particularly kind of going back to COVID, that was a really rough time emotionally and mentally, and recognizing that I'm not necessarily in the space to accomplish the volume that I could before was an eye-opener too. Like, I'm a human being. Yeah. So there were times when I had to put things on that to-do list that seemed very basic, but it was a struggle to get out of bed sometimes. So my list might look like, put out this, write this proposal, or, send these emails and blah, blah, blah. During that time, that list was shorter and sometimes said things like, take a shower, and I know, and that's real. And I needed that to kind of really, what you did, you accomplished things today. So I think managing your schedule and your life and your expectations in a way that's relative to what is happening in your life is really critical, because otherwise you're going to feel like you're screwing up or you're failing every time, and you're working your behind off. So I think kind of really understanding that and managing your personal expectations of yourself are really critical.
Oh, that's so good. That is so good. You can have 50 hours worth of stuff in a 24-hour day. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've got another question from Facebook, and they're asking about self-care. Like, what are some of the practical things that you do to keep yourself healthy? What does your regimen look like?
Absolutely. Well, I would say the biggest thing for me is saying no. Now that sounds probably like, is that self-care? But it is for me, because it, sometimes it's a struggle to just decline certain things that I've thought were, this is an opportunity of a lifetime, and, all these things. And sometimes I have to pull back and go, wait a minute, like, I cannot do everything. And so if I say yes to this particular thing, I'm going to neglect something else. So I have to say no. So that for me, that's my best example of self-care for myself. Mm-hmm. Other things are all really awesome bonuses, but saying no just prevails.
Yes. So Amber asks, how, and you all, the questions are coming. I love it. So Danielle, thank you for offering so much valuable advice. Amber wants to know, how did you make the transition from working in your business to actually running your business? When did you know it was time to hire your first employees?
So in my case, I wanted to be able to still work my 9 to 5. I wanted my job to fund my business. So I knew it wouldn't be kind of a right away kind of a thing. So, my cousin, he was my first employee pretty quickly, because I actually, I'm like, okay, if I set these processes in place, I'll be able to have at least one person to help get me started. So we, pretty much from the beginning, it was, my cousin and I. So sometimes it was just me, sometimes it was him. And then about 3 months after that, I took on a second employee. And so then over time, we grew I guess about maybe quarterly, we would add 1 or 2 more employees. And then sometimes that would ebb and, that kind of, ebbed and flowed. But, because it's a service-based business, it was sort of right off the bat, needing an employee. In terms of deciding when to, take that step. And there was a point where I was working my 9 to 5. We had grown to the point where I needed to be present as a CEO more than I was. Like I had to make a decision, like either I'm going to be a part-time CEO, work this 9 to 5 and stay right here, which is fine, or take the risk and, jump in full time and grow. And I had set that goal to do it. And I was also very terrified. So it looked like, okay, this is something it's feasible. I've been saving and, worst case scenario, like if everybody quits, if the whole team quits and it's just me, can I survive? That was sort of my like, what is the worst thing that could happen? Okay, then I'm going to do it. Got scared again. And I said, I decided to turn in my notice, but I turned in a 3-month notice because I was like, okay, I need some time. And I want everybody to be comfortable, and really everybody was me, So, I needed a safe space. I needed to be comfortable. But after I did that, it also kind of fueled me. Like there wasn't a safety net. I had savings, I had a plan, I had set the goal almost 3 years prior. But as far as like, this is real, this is my livelihood. And that really, I think if I hadn't made that decision at that point, we wouldn't have grown. It would have just kind of stayed where it was. So I'm thankful for that point. And so that was I had set the goal for 3 years. I made that transition. I think it was 2 years and like 10 months or something like that. But it was still scary.
That's one of I think the interesting things about it too is, we all have different levels of risk tolerance.
Mm-hmm.
I have a pretty high risk tolerance, or at least I'm used to. The older I get, the smaller it is. Because like, okay, I may not have as much time to play catch up, But then there are other people that it's like, okay, everything has to be perfect before I step out, and it never will. It's sometimes that reasonable level of risk that you're carrying that will push you to do more. Because as long as everything is safe and comfortable, you're not going to get to that next level.
Absolutely. And I think of so many opportunities that would not have taken place had I not stepped out and just said, okay, it's time to go full time in the business. Once that happened, so many other doors opened up, and all in the form of support, accelerators that I otherwise wouldn't have been able to take part in because, they only pay attention to full-time CEOs. If this is your side hustle, you're just not ready. So it was like I stepped out, no safety net. Then the safety net appeared in the form of accelerators, incubators, potential investors, and things like that.
Yeah. So we're getting close to the end of our time together today, but I have just a couple more questions for you. One, tell us about your hopes for the future for Detroit Maid.
Well, absolutely. I'm really excited because we will always be Detroit Maid, but we have expanded to the point that it really necessitates a name change. So as of December 1st, we will be Clean Break. So that's our new, so we're expanding, and our next phase, we're going to be in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. So that should be complete, first quarter of next year. So I'm really excited about that. And then, we're phasing quarterly throughout that. So, long term, we're global. So, and I say we are because I believe that to be so. So we're a global company. And I'm just excited for the here and now. I'm excited to see what comes, and stay tuned.
It is so. Now we've got a lot of people watching, a lot of questions that came. And I know there are a lot of people that are going to hear this later, perhaps even years from now.
Mhm.
And I just want to know, what advice do you have for someone who's struggling to maybe even step out and start,
Mhm.
well as that person who is just frustrated and questioning if it's even worth it?
Mhm. Mhm. I would say that ask yourself if you'll regret which would be a bigger regret. Not attempting something and wondering what would have happened, or attempting it and maybe failing, maybe succeeding, and just not knowing whether or not you would have succeeded. And to just, if you're scared, just feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yes. Thank you. That is great advice, because the fear isn't going to go away. There will be things to be afraid of. But we've got to do it anyway. Yes.
Mhm.
Thank you so much, Danielle, for
Thank
being
you. Thank you. This is so
um, man. I'm every time I see you, and especially, I see you in national media and Fortune, um, Good Housekeeping, and of
Thank
course
you.
you're on Good Morning America. I just lost my mind.
Oh, thanks.
And I just still remember you as a teenager
Yeah.
on campus at CU. And I will tell you, I knew then that you were
Oh,
a powerhouse. And
oh, thank you. I feel the same way about you. Oh my goodness.
so it's just to be able to share this space with you and to have this conversation, because boy, I didn't know I was an entrepreneur back then either. And so to go from being in a space where our life was media to now being in a space where our life is entrepreneurship and sharing that journey, that feels very special. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. And one of the themes that we heard over and over and over again is support. You heard her talk about having the support of family, having the support of her spouse, having the support of a team around her, having the support through incubators and accelerators and the community, the business community in Detroit. And so if you are out there and you are an entrepreneur, or if you are looking to start and you're struggling because you're in this thing by yourself and it doesn't feel good, then I want to invite you to the community that we have just for you. And it's called Startup Life Support. And Startup Life Support is really designed to be that entrepreneurial family for you, of people who understand the struggle, because maybe everybody doesn't get it. The people who are closest to you, the people who love you the most, may not understand why you are doing this. And that's okay, because it's not necessarily their role to be able to be that for you. But you need to be around people who get it, who can support you, who will hold you accountable, and who will help to shorten that learning curve, help you to have that clarity about what it is that you want to accomplish, to have the confidence to walk into those rooms that Danielle talked about, and to bring your own chair, even if you question whether or not you belong. And then also just those people that are there to celebrate with you, those milestones that may seem minuscule to everybody else, but for people who understand it, they get it. And so I want to invite you to join us, to visit us at Startup Life Support. It's an online community. We meet twice a month. And to learn more, just go right over to visit.startuplifesupport.com, where you can sign up to be my guest to come and join us. And I just, again, want to thank Danielle Parker for joining us. Thanks to all of you for watching and listening. And until next time, be sure to create your life on purpose. We'll see you later.